Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Shay. I make content about horror movies, horror TV shows, horror games, and theme parks because I live in Central Florida and I feel like it would be a crime not to. And if you are not new here, thank you so much for coming back. So, today's video is a little bit heavier because the subject matter is a little bit heavier. I'm just going to put a disclaimer right here. By just putting a disclaimer, I'm just going to say it. The disclaimer is that this movie is going to be dealing with topics of religion, and there might be some things that I say that seem offensive, but it's not necessarily coming from me, it's coming from the movie. So if that type of talk bothers you, you don't have to watch this video. Like, you can skip this video. I completely understand, but it's hard to avoid the topic of religion because that's literally what this movie's about. So I recently watched this movie. I actually watched it twice because the first time I was kind of falling asleep, and then the second time I was able to pay attention and actually catch things. I feel like this is one of those movies you need to watch twice. But we are talking today about the movie Heretic. So I'm really excited about this one. This was one of my most anticipated for last year, and I feel like it didn't disappoint. We'll talk about how it was scary, like how if it was scary, like later on, but I just want to preface this by saying that, like, yes, this is going to be a video about religion. So if you're not comfortable with that, you can skip this one. Okay, so I am ready to get into this review. We're going to just jump right into it because I have a lot to say, but also I have, like, not a lot to say. So let's jump right into this creepy critique. The movie came out in November 8th, 2024, and it was distributed by A24. Of course, A24 always has like weird movies, so like it's one of those movies that it's an acquired taste, I think, but I think it's on their better end of the spectrum for this one. This movie currently has a 91% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7 out of 10 on IMDb, which I think is a pretty good review there, like pretty good review. And here's the synopsis of the movie so we can get into talking about it. Two young missionaries become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. So, a little bit of like backstory for this movie. I don't know if it's backstory, but a little bit of factoids about this movie. So, if you didn't know, this movie is about Mormon missionaries who get put into a position where they are questioning their faith. And what I think is really fascinating, I'm just coming off like straight off this, both actresses, Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, are ex-Mormons. So I think that's really cool that they actually, and I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if they purposely looked for people who had some connection to Mormonism, or if it was just like a crazy coincidence that both of these women were raised as Mormons and have now left the church. So I think that's pretty cool, because that they have sort of like a firsthand account of what it's like to live that lifestyle. And it definitely comes off, especially with Chloe East. She definitely plays the part of like the super naive, like sweet um, Mormon missionary. So I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I am not Mormon. I am in no way, shape, or form Mormon. I'm not hating on anybody that is necessarily, but I'm not Mormon. So there is a lot of stuff that I don't know. What I am going to do is I might reference a creator that I've been watching who is an ex-Mormon who grew up and like lived in the church for many, many years of her life. Her name is Alyssa Grenfell, and she actually did a review from an ex-Mormon's point of view of this movie, which I thought was super cool. And I watched the entire thing this past weekend after I watched this movie, and I found it to be incredibly fascinating. I don't know what my cat is on tonight. She's on something tonight. She's going crazy. Okay. So, yes, it stars Hugh Grant as Mr. Reed. It's, I think, the first time we're really seeing Hugh Grant as a villain, which I think is kind of cool. I always love when people who are typecast as like a specific type of character do like a heel turn into like villainy, or sometimes people who are typecast as villains play like the good guy. Hugh Grant was like a heartthrob for like most of the 90s and the 2000s. He was like the ideal British guy, and every movie I've seen him in has always been like a romantic comedy or like um something super like fun and enjoy. Like, I actually really like this is gonna be so stupid, but I actually really like the movie music and lyrics. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that movie, but it's him and Drew Barrymore, and he's a washed up pop star from the 80s, and he's trying to write a hit song for a pop star, and um Drew Barrymore's character is like she's like an expert wordsmith, and she's really really smart. She's really really good with like, like coming up with rhymes and poems, and then the two of them, I know this is a whole tangential thing, but the two of them start working together, and of course they fall in love. And I like the music, I like the songs, they're very cute. I love that Pop Goes My Heart song so much. Like it is a cute movie. It's not Hugh Grant's best, but it's definitely not his worst. I just love that movie. It's charming, it's like a fun romantic comedy. I love fun romantic comedies sometimes. But yeah, so it was cool to see him do a heel turn into a villain. He actually was like the perfect person to cast for this role, because a lot of what his character needed was kind of his um befuddling charm, I guess is the best way to put it. It needed like this charm in it, like not necessarily charisma, but more like he's just very, like, he seems very innocuous, and then all of a sudden he is not innocuous in the slightest. Um, so I thought he did a great job. Both Sophie Thatcher, first of all, Sophie Thatcher is probably one of my favorite up and coming actresses right now. I think she's going to be one to watch. She's like in almost everything I've seen her in. I love her. Like I love her work. Obviously, I'm a huge Yellow Jackets fan. That review is coming soon. Yellow Jackets. I'm gonna go through season 1, do a review on season 1, then season 2, and then finally season 3. I've been trying to wait until season 3 is almost over, so then I can do the review properly. But she plays one of my favorite characters in Yellow Jackets, and she absolutely chews the scenery. I just love her style and everything like that, and she's great. I really want to see that movie Companion that she's in. I'm like, that's the only reason I want to see it, is because she's in it. I'm like, yeah, keep giving her work. Just keep giving her work, especially in horror stuff. Keep giving her work. She is phenomenal. And I don't really know much about Chloe East. When I looked up like her filmography, I didn't recognize anything, so she's new to me. But she did fantastic, and honestly, she was like the standout for me, because there was something about her character that almost felt like good. Like, okay, so there's something that Alyssa Grenfell talks about in her video, which I thought her point of view of coming from obviously living in that lifestyle was really really great. But I also saw something different in this movie a little bit, and so I'm gonna insert the clip of right here where she's talking. I'm not gonna play the whole clip, but where she kind of talks a little bit about the differences between Sophie Thatcher's character, Sister Barnes, and Chloe East's character, Sister Paxton.
Yeah, but I liked how they depicted the two sister missionaries, because we have Sister Paxton, who is the happy-go-lucky, kind of more naive, blonde, brightly dressed. She has the pink cardigan. She's happy and bubbly and smiley. She's one depiction of a Mormon missionary. And then Sister Barnes she's more like me. She's wearing black throughout the film. She has black hair. Has darker features. And she's also the one that's more skeptical. At the beginning, she said that she's not received a sure witness, and so she maybe is supposed to be, I think she's definitely presented as the skeptic missionary. And I will say I met both on my mission, some who were born and raised in the church, and just kind of fully in it, fully faithful, no questions asked. They've probably never even heard that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, because they've been so baked into the culture that unfavorable aspect of church history never even reached their ears. And then we have Sister Barnes, who I also knew at BYU and on my mission, who's interfaced more with the disfavorable aspects of church history, who's more nuanced to say maybe there are many paths to God, but it would be great if more people join the church. And I really liked that they have these two kind of skeptic and faithful foils of each other, because I felt like it was fun to see them play off of each other as characters, and it felt very real to my experience with people who come to the church with many points of view.
So as you can see, they kind of fit like a quote-unquote caricature of Mormon missionaries. Sister Barnes, however, seems more skeptical, and Sister Paxton seems more like devout when it comes to the two of them. However, throughout this movie, there was something that I noticed. It was a shifting of the roles. Sister Paxton comes off as very naive. She definitely looks to Sister Barnes for a lot more like validation and help, but she just comes off as extremely naive. But as the movie goes on, you start to see her sort of flip a switch. It like it starts when he has them questioning their faith, where he tells them they can go through one door says belief, one door says disbelief. She immediately goes to the door that says disbelief because her assumption is that if she goes to the belief, she probably won't get out of the house. And she looks at Sister Barnes and she's like, come on. And then Sister Barnes is the one that's like, I'm going to stand on business. I'm going through the belief door. And are you coming with me, Sister Paxton? And Sister Paxton's like, I guess. And she goes with her. It seemed like, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it seemed like Sister Paxton was more like willing to debate the faith more so than Sister Barnes. Sister Barnes comes off initially as she's a little bit more skeptical between the two of them, but as the movie goes on, you really see that she is devout. Like she is devout. Like she is devout, even though she's like kind of like it's only she's a from what they say in the movie, she's like a late stage Mormon. So she wasn't born into Mormonism. Her mother converted into Mormonism, and she then grew up with Mormonism. Whereas Sister Paxton was born and raised in Mormonism. That's her entire life. She knows nothing else. And it's just very interesting to see how the one who was kind of brought into Mormonism was the one that was willing to stand on business when it came to her faith all the time, whereas the one who was born into it was a little bit like, I'm just in survival mode right now. I just want to get out of this house. I don't care about this like theological discussion. I don't care about, the religious discussion or the repercussions of anything. I just want to get out of this house. So let's backtrack a little bit. I'm not going to go through the entire movie, but there are going to be spoilers. So I just want to hit some like important points in my opinion. So the movie opens up with Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton having a discussion about adult films, where Sister Paxton is admitting that she did see an adult video at one point in time, and that she felt like the woman's soul had left her body when she was in the throes of ecstasy, for lack of a better term. And you can tell that there was this sort of morbid curiosity coming from Sister Paxton, which you would imagine coming from that religion where it's heavily like scrutinized that you do not even like make out before marriage. You hold hands, maybe you hug, maybe you like it's closed mouth kisses. It's interesting to see like she's a little bit curious, but she also still is like, no, I can't, I can't, like that's so messed, like that's so wrong, like that she just felt like her soul was leaving her body. So they have that little discussion. I think that's a really great way to set up the scene, especially for people who maybe aren't as familiar with Mormonism. I'm gonna be straight with you right now. I have a weird obsession with Mormonism. I think it's because I almost became a Mormon many, many, many years ago. I was friends with somebody who was Mormon, and she was really selling it to me. And I went to their services. I read the Book of Mormon, not the whole thing. I read a lot of it. I used to have the Book of Mormon. I don't have it anymore. I ended up giving it to somebody else. Yeah, so I think that's why I'm super like fascinated by Mormonism, because I was young. I was very young. I think I was in high school. Like, yeah, no, I was in my senior year of high school. I was very young. So like I really didn't know anything. I didn't even know, I never even heard of Mormonism at that point in time. So it just seemed like it was the answer to my problems. I think the main reason I didn't convert was because I was scared of what my parents would say. Because I was raised Catholic, so I was scared of what my parents would say. So I kind of backed off of it, but I was really into it. And I'm not saying that as like, I want to go join the Mormon church right now. I'm definitely not saying that. I became fascinated with it. And in general, I'm fascinated by religion in general. I'm kind of like Mr. Reed in this movie, but without the like psychological torture. And I will say this off the bat, a lot of the stuff he says resonated with me. So anyways, but yeah, so I think that's why. So it really set the scene for like the Mormon missionaries, and it's just like these two somewhat extremely innocent girls. Then there's a part where they're walking down the street with their bikes and they see these girls walking in the middle of the street filming a TikTok, more than likely because they're doing TikTok dances. And then the three girls see the two sisters walking, and they go like, "Oh my gosh, can we get a picture?" And they run up to them and ask them if they can get a picture. And while they're taking a picture with Sister Paxton, one of the girls asks, "Is it true that you guys wear magic underwear?" And when she goes, "What?" she pulls her skirt down, and for like a brief moment we get a glimpse of the garments. Now if you don't know what garments are, they are special underwear that once you've I'm probably gonna screw this up, I'm so sorry, but once you've gone through temple, and once you've gone through temple, I believe you have to wear them. I don't know, I'll put if I'll figure it out and I'll put it on the screen. But they give them to Mormons and they have to wear them underneath their clothes. I'll put a picture right here. So yeah, they tell you what you can wear underneath your clothes, but you get a brief glimpse of that. And of course that really messes up Sister Paxton when they're going to their next house to evangelize. She's crying, and Sister Barnes is kind of like, "Oh, great, like this is terrible." And then when they are locking their bikes up, Sister Paxton actually asks, you know "Do you think people make fun of us?" And Sister Barnes is like, "Why would you think that?" And she's like, "Well, there's that musical by the South Park guys," which I thought was cool that they mentioned the Book of Mormon in there. But yeah, so she's like, "Yeah, it's like there's that musical by the South Park guys." So you can just see, like, they're like, Sister Paxton is an incredibly naive character, but we love her in this household. Anyways, so then they go up to the house, and it's a house that's just like in the middle of nowhere, and it looks so quaint and so like lovely. Honestly, it looks like, it reminds me of almost like Hansel and Gretel, like the house made of candy that draws you in. Like, it's so quaint, and it's like a place that you wouldn't even think anything weird is going on. So they knock on the door, and Mr. Reed answers the door, and of course he's Hugh Granting all over the place. He's being very charming, he's being very kind, and he has, because he's older now, he has this like sort of almost like grandfatherly charm to him in this movie, where it's like, when you first see him, you're kind of like, "Oh, he's like a nice little grandpa, like he's nice little grandpa." And he's like, "Oh, come on in." So one thing that I will say is that he asks them to come in, to talk about the Book of Mormon, because they're going to talk about it. And Sister Paxton brings up that they are not allowed to enter the house unless there is a woman present, which is actually true. Alyssa Grenfell explains that in her video. I'm just going to keep deferring to her because she's fantastic. I love her channel. She explains that in her video, that they're not, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, and they are definitely not allowed to go into the house of the opposite sex if there's no one of the same sex there. So he says, "Oh, my wife is in the kitchen baking a pie, so she'll join us in a minute. You guys can come on in." They totally bought it. They totally bought it. So they come in. He offers to take their coats, and then he asks them a very peculiar question. "Are you okay with metal in the walls and the ceiling?" And they're like, "Yeah." Like, why are you asking us that? So after that, he takes their coats, he goes off, does his thing, he comes back, he has sodas for them, which, if you know Mormonism, they're not supposed to drink soda. He has sodas for them, and then they sit there, and he launches into this incredibly like theological conversation. He starts comparing, he starts using like fast food restaurants as an example of all these different religions and everything. um this is where I'm gonna like definitely praise just everyone who worked on this movie, from the actors all the way to like the people who did sound design, everything like that. It's been a long time since I've watched a movie where I felt unsettled while I was watching it. It was something about it, and the thing is, it's like I'm listening to the stuff that Mr. Reed is saying, and as somebody who is, I'm spiritual, but I don't follow any like specific religion. I don't follow any like doctrine. I agreed with a lot of the stuff he was saying, but it's the way he's saying it, and it's the environment that was making me uncomfortable. and I was like, this movie has me on edge. And I also think it was because I knew nothing about what happened after they went into that house. I was really good at avoiding spoilers for this movie. There's a lot of movies I've seen in like recent years where it's like it's been spoiled for me. Um, and so that was kind of cool not knowing what was going to happen going into this movie. And it made it a lot more, it had me a lot more on edge. I was literally like, at one point I could feel my heart racing because I was like, this is so uncomfortable. But then I'm like, but I agree with him, but it's uncomfortable. The way he's delivering it is not, no, I don't agree with that. Um, so he talks to them. He kind of like brings up he brings up polygamy. He brings up that Joseph Smith likely like allowed polygamy because he was having an affair. Um, and like it was his excuse to be able to have affairs, basically, to do whatever he wanted with women, which, is a common criticism of the church. And then Sister Barnes comes back and is like, actually, polygamy only existed within the Mormon church because we were executed when, because I never even knew this till I started watching content about it, but there was like a big like war with the Mormons, and people were like they were taken out at some point. I don't think they were completely taken out, but they were like, there was some fighting that went on. There was some fighting that went on. So like she mentions like, oh, like they were essentially like they were exterminated. That's what I'm trying to think of the word to say. They were exterminated. And because they were exterminated, she said that that's why they promoted polygamy. But now, because they have so many people that are members of the church all over the world, they no longer have a need for polygamy. So yeah, and I don't think that's why they ditched polygamy, but we're not going to get into it because it's not what this channel is about. But I don't think that's why they ditched polygamy. Just going to say that. So after that, he like after that, he's been having this conversation with them, and Sister Paxton is getting visibly uncomfortable. She asks Mr. Reed, we really need to see your wife. Like, can you just tell her to come on out? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I'll go get her. And he blows out this candle that's sitting on the table. And then he gets up and he walks away. He leaves. And as the two girls are sitting there, Sister Barnes kind of notices something about the candle, and she turns the candle around, and I'm sure you've seen it in the trailer. She turns the candle around and it says blueberry pie scented. So there is no blueberry pie. It was a candle. And I am not going to get a blueberry pie candle or a blueberry candle because I don't like food scents. And I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I would not have fallen for that trick. Not because of the woman needs to be there thing. I wouldn't have fallen for that trick because I hate food scented candles. I would walk in there and I would have immediately wanted to gag. I would have been like, oh my god, what kind of pie is she baking? I would be like, whoa, what kind of pie is she baking? Like, it smells like candle wax and like food coloring. I don't know what food coloring smells like, but I hate food scented candles except for citrusy candles or coconut. Those are the only two like exceptions. But like Bath and Body Works released like a pizza scented candle last year. That thing was an assault on my senses. Okay, I regret smelling that candle. And I didn't even smell it while it was burning. I didn't even. People were like, "It smells like you're baking a pizza," and I'm like, "I can assure you, it does not smell like you're baking a pizza." Listen, everybody's got different scents. I know some people really love like the smell of food. They love having like vanilla and stuff, and I can't do it. It makes me nauseous. But yeah, so Sister Barnes realizes that it was a candle all along, and they both start to kind of like panic. So they're like, okay, we need to get out of here. So they go over to the front door and they try to open the front. Well, first they go over to the front door and they realize that their coats were still left behind. They're like, crap. And then they kind of look at each other and they're like, their coats were left behind, and they had the bike lock key in their pocket. So they're like, you know what, we can walk back. We don't need to get our bikes. And they go to try to open the door, and the door won't open. And as they're continuously pulling on the door handle, they realize there's no lock on the door. So they're like, okay, we can't leave. So they look at a window. The windows are really tiny. It's like you start to realize that the entire house is kind of designed so you cannot leave. Like all of the windows are super thin or super small where a person couldn't fit through that. It's a mess. Like it's a mess. So they go to look for Mr. Reed and they end up in this room that is designed to look like a church. It has like the pews and it has like a desk in the front and then there's like a bunch of bookcases. And he tells them, you know, like he like they ask him, "Hey, can you like open the door and let us out cuz we got to go." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, no, the door doesn't open. It won't open till morning." And they're like, "What do you mean it won't open till morning?" And he's like, well, it's like on an automatic timer, so like, and they're like, you can't open the front door. He's like, no, if you want to leave, you're gonna have to leave through the back of my house. So then Sister Paxton pulls out the like, okay, can you bring your wife out, please? Really bring your wife out. Like at this point, if you don't bring your wife out, like I'm a crash out right here, right now. So she's like, can you bring your wife out? So he goes over to the door and then he turns back and looks at her and he goes, do you really believe that I'm going to get like that? There's still a wife. Like, if you believe, I'll go and get her. But after everything you've seen, do you really believe that there's a wife? And I'm like, it's so good. It was so good. Like the like the shoe drop, like that moment where he just stops and he turns and looks at them like, you really believe that? Like, come on, guys. Like at this point, you've got to know there is no wife. Like I am. There's no other women. Well, pause. We will get to that. There's no other women in this house, but there is other women in this house. We'll get to it. So at that point, he starts to explain, he starts to go down a rabbit hole of explaining religion, talking about the like talking about how each religion kind of offshoots. And the example he uses is Monopoly. So he starts off with the regular game Monopoly, and he's like, you know this game? And he goes like this. He basically describes that Monopoly is kind of like Christianity. It's very well known. Everybody knows that. Everybody's had an encounter with it. People have played it. Some people have like never finished the Bible or like left Christianity. So and it's kind of the same as Monopoly. Sometimes you don't finish the game because you're just like, okay, this is too long and too boring. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever finished a game of Monopoly. He's onto something there. So then he pulls out the Landlord's game, and if you guys didn't know, the Landlord's game actually predates Monopoly. The Landlord's game was created by a woman. I'm gonna put her name up here because I didn't research this. Put her name up here, but it's created by a woman. It was created by a woman, and it predated Monopoly. Eventually, a man saw the game, decided, hey, that's actually a really cool game. I'm gonna take that entire idea and sell it to Parker Brothers, and that's exactly what he did, and it became the version that we know today as Monopoly. And he said that the landlord's game is Judaism. So you got landlord's game being Judaism, and then Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, and then an offshoot of that is Islam, which is more modern. Like I'm not this isn't me, this is what he said. It was a more modern kind of version of this, and it's more like the modern versions of Monopoly, where you see they have like the electronic banking, they have all this fancy stuff. So Islam is more, of a modern thing. And then he finally comes out and says, and then you have Mormonism, which is like the zany cousin of everything. And he pulls out a Bob Ross Monopoly board. Like it's like gimmicky. And I can understand why that's offensive to some people. I can understand, like the whole thing, I can understand. Then he also goes into a diatribe about the song All I Need Is the Air That I Breathe. I was trying to remember that, by the Hollies. And he was asking them if they'd ever heard the song before. And actually, I love this part because he was playing the song from the moment that they walked in the room, pretty much. And then when the song ends, he starts it back over and he goes, have you ever heard this song? And I actually went, he just played it. And Sister Paxton went, you just played that song. And I was like, see? Like, finally somebody actually listens to me in horror movies. I was just like, he just played it. And then she was like, you just played that song. And so he goes, no, he's like, no, like before today, have you ever heard that song? And then they're both like, because they're young, they're like, no, what the hell? This is old. And he goes, oh, I'm sure you've heard the song. And he goes, I'm sure you've heard of Creep by Radiohead. And they're kind of like, maybe. I don't know how well Mormons are well versed with Radiohead. He tells them about the story about what happened with the Hollies and Radiohead. So apparently when Creep came out, and I didn't know this part of it, but apparently when Creep came out, Creep was eerily similar to All I Need Is the Air That I Breathe. And the Hollies sued Radiohead for that because it was like they felt like it was copyright infringement. So you know the original, the original, the offshoot, and then in 2017, Lana Del Rey, and I do remember this one, she released a song that sounded eerily similar to Creep, and Radiohead sued her. And it's like, but they're not even the originators. Now I can go on a whole tangent about music, but that's not the point he's trying to make. Like, I think that there's certain copyright laws that I don't agree apply because there's only so many chords and chord progressions you can do in music before something sounds like something else. You know, it's difficult. It's difficult. There's just, again, and I don't think it's that big of a deal because as long as you're not actually lifting or copying someone's entire song, I don't see what the issue is. You know, like when Sam Smith got sued for Stay With Me, and Tom Petty was like, I had no intention of suing them. I had no intention of that whatsoever because, like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. But his lawyers sued Sam Smith. So, yeah. So I'm not going to go on that whole diatribe. I don't need to. But again, the whole point is he's showing you the original religion and then all of the later additions, and he starts to go on about how he's been trying to find the one true religion. He was majoring in religious studies when he was in college. He was just going down a rabbit hole, going with every single religion, and he was just desperate to find the answer, the one true religion. And so he poses a question to the two girls. He writes belief and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting a part. So then he also shows them all of these different gods from all of these different religions. You know, you've got, you know, ancient Egyptian worship, you've got Buddhism, you've got like all these different gods, and he talks about how the story of Jesus Christ has parts of each god essentially. And you know, basically just kind of like, and I'm only saying this because one of my favorite lines has to do with this room. So he's basically telling them like that, you know, Christianity stole those stories from other, you know, other religions and other belief systems, which is a hotly debated topic, you know, amongst people who know a lot about religion. So after that, he writes on the two doors, belief and disbelief. And he tells the girls, if you want to get out of here, you got to pick which door to go through. And so as soon as he tells them that, Sister Paxton goes over to the disbelief door because she's like, I have a feeling this is where he wants me to go. Like, he wants me to go through disbelief. He wants me to like give up my faith. But then Sister Barnes is like, nah, I'm walking with the Lord. And she goes over to the belief door. And once she like goes to open the door, you know, he's like, he's like, are you sure about your decision? And she's like, your whole thing is offensive. Everything that you said was incredibly offensive. You're comparing this, that, and the other. She's just throwing facts at him. You're comparing this, that, and the other, ignoring this and that. And then she goes, you're trying to say these guys are all like, are part of, or like these guys are all the inspiration for Jesus Christ, when there's nothing, they have nothing in common. And she goes, that one has a bird for her head. Pointing to one of the Egyptian gods. And so I'm just like, oh my god. And to me it's funny because it's like the naivety like, well, he can't be a deity because he just got a bird for a head. Who's gonna listen to him? So I just was like, okay, yeah, that one's got a bird on his head. So then she basically is like, I know what I believe. I know what is the truth. I'm going through this door. And she looks at Sister Paxton. She's like, are you coming with me? Is your belief strong enough? And Sister Paxton's like, okay, I'm going to go through the belief door. So they open the door because they realize there's two staircases. So they open the door and they start to descend down the staircase, and they get down to this dungeon of sorts. The only thing in the dungeon is a table and a chair. And at first they try to figure out how to get out because there's no way to get out except for going back up the way they came. But then as they are desperately trying to figure something out. They hear the door open, and in walks this woman who is like covered, she's wearing like a gray dress and she's covered in a gray veil, and she's carrying a blueberry pie, and she's walking very hunched over. She puts the pie on the table, and then she goes into the corner and does this like meditation where she like literally just like contorts herself and then just stays there. It was interesting. It was interesting, let's be honest. So then she goes over and she starts eating the pie, and over the loudspeaker, Mr. Reed is explaining that the pie is an old family recipe, but tonight he poisoned the pie. And he said, she's going to die, and then you're going to watch her resurrect, and she's going to tell you what the afterlife is. So he's like, so they're like, okay. So they watch her eat the pie. She dies. She collapses. They check her pulse. At the direction of Mr. Reed, they check to see if she's breathing, and yeah, she's definitely dead. Like she's gone. She's done. Like okay, like that's fine. Like what you okay? And you're like okay, she's gonna resurrect, and they keep waiting and keep waiting. But then at one point, they he hears the doorbell ring, and he goes to check to see who it is. And now this is a fun little like character who was only in like 2 scenes of the whole movie, but Topher Grace is Elder Kennedy. Topher Grace from that 70s show. I like when I saw him, I was like, I recognize him, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to him the first time, and then the second time I was like, yeah, that's Topher Grace. Okay. So he saw like he was looking for Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, and he's like looking for them, and he's asking Mr. Reed, and Mr. Reed's like, no, I haven't seen any young missionaries, no one's come by today, you're the first person. And he's like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, the two girls are at the door, the door they came through, screaming at the top of their lungs like, help us, like banging on the door, but he can't hear them because they're like far back in the house, they're like away from the door. So then, Elder Kennedy is like, all right, well, thank you for your time. And he leaves. And then as Mr. Reed's turning to walk back, there, he hears the doorbell ring again. And for a moment, the audience thinks that maybe Elder Kennedy heard the girls. And he's like, no, I'm going to go in, let me inspect for that moment. You think that, maybe he's heard the girls. But then when Mr. Reed opens the door, Elder Kennedy is like, you know what? I wouldn't feel right leaving here if I didn't give you this pamphlet. And he gives him a pamphlet about Mormonism. And it's just so on brand. It's so on brand. Like Alyssa Grenfell explains it really great in her video. It's so on brand. Like that's something that would happen. And it's a funny moment, but it's also a really sad moment because you realize he really doesn't know that they're like right downstairs. So they try to get like matches to strike the to like light a fire to get out. I don't really know what their plan was. Oh wait, they were gonna light, there's like a chimney flume. They were gonna light the like put smoke there to try to get the elders' attention. So they come back down the stairs after they get some matches, and Sister Paxton notices that the woman on the tables body had switched, like her position had switched, and she points it out to Sister Barnes, and Sister Barnes is like, no, you're misremembering it. And Sister Paxton's like, no, I could have sworn she was in the other position, like she wasn't facing this way, she was facing that way. And Sister Barnes is like, don't worry about it, come help me. So she goes to help her, and they're doing their thing, and as they're doing their thing, this is the only like jump scare moment in the movie. Sister Barnes turns around, and Sister Paxton's sitting next to her, and right behind her you see the prophet. Or I guess, yeah, she's called the prophet. You see the prophet, and she's like sitting behind Sister Paxton. The two of them scream. The prophet throws up because we can't have a movie about religion without somebody puking for some reason. I don't know why that always has to be a theme. So then she tells them about the afterlife and what she saw, and then she says to them, like, the last thing she says to them is, it is not real. And so they're like, okay, whatever. And then Mr. Reed comes in, and he's like, oh, thank you, I'm sure you're exhausted, like let's get you back in the room. So then he starts to talk about how he can, how like he can bring people back, like she can bring people back to life, that she saw the other side, she saw the afterlife, and all that stuff. And then Sister Barnes admits that she actually died kind of. She had a really bad case of food poisoning from Taco Bell, and when she was a kid, and she ended up in the hospital. She actually died from the case of food poisoning, and she says that what the prophet described is what I saw when I died. That was a near death experience. That wasn't heaven. And so he's just like, okay, um, you know, whatever. So then at the time, like, they're trying to figure, he's trying to like mess with their heads and everything. And Sister Paxton had a letter opener that she had like stole, like she had kind of sneakily put in her pocket. And Sister Barnes told her that when I say the magic words, which is magic underwear, stab him, stab Mr. Reed. So they're Sister Barnes and Mr. Reed are kind of going back and forth, and then Sister Barnes says something about like, no, I'm wearing magic underwear, and it's supposed to be like this epic moment because Sister Paxton's pulling this out and to the letter opener out to like stab him, and then Mr. Reed just slices Sister Barnes' throat. And so he slices her throat and she collapses to the ground, presumably dead. And Sister Paxton is like, oh my gosh, now I'm all alone having to face this. So after he does that, he goes into Sister Barnes's arm. He literally cuts into her arm and he pulls out this little kind of metal looking thing. And he says to Sister Paxton that Sister Barnes was like a robot or like a simulation, which I also think is kind of funny because technically that's what she is in Companion. But it's like she's like a robot, she's like a simulation. And he's like, I'm sorry. And then he goes into like the Matrix theory. We've all heard the theory that the world isn't real, and like we're all just in a simulation. Like we've heard that theory. So he goes into that theory, and then Sister Paxton's like, I think you're improvising. And he's like, what do you mean? And she goes, you're trying to convince me to believe in the simulation theory, but that's not what was supposed to go according to plan tonight. And then he goes, well, what do you think happened with the prophet then? And she goes, I think you switched the bodies. I was like, ooh, clocked it. She was like, I think you switched the bodies. And the way she said it was so good too, because I was just like, ooh, the way she just like was like, well, I think you switched the bodies. And then he was like, how could I have switched the bodies? Like, what do you mean? How could I have done that? And then she goes, she noticed that she was facing a different direction when they came back in. And she goes, so I think what happened was, you had when the other prophet died, you had her thrown down a hatch, and then another prophet, another woman in the same exact outfit that looked exactly like her, was in the took her place, but she didn't kind of pay attention to which way she was like, or maybe it was intentional. So she's like, there's got to be a trap door here, and she notices that there's water dripping right on something specific on the floor. She moves it, she moves the dirt out the way, and she realizes there is a trap door. And then he's like, well, if there's a trap door, then that means that there's a body down there, so why don't you go look? And she's like, I'm gonna go look. So she goes downstairs, and of course she finds a body. But not only that, she finds this weird, chaotic set of rooms. Like, she's walking through these corridors, and the entirety of this like, it progressively gets more and more pagan. Which, like, I hate when paganism is used as like a scary thing, but it fit here. And it just progressively gets more and more pagan, more dark, more intense. And then finally she gets to a door that has their bike lock on the door, like holding it shut. So she takes out the key from her pocket, she opens the bike lock, and then she opens the door, and there's a whole room of women that looks very similar to the prophet in cages. Like a whole room, and they're being kept frozen. Like, he's like not frozen, but like he has the temperature super cold, so they're all shivering and they're all like, shriveled up, they're malnourished. And I'm like, dude, like, first of all, that's the only complaint I have about this movie. Where did he get those women? Are they also missionaries? Are they just random women that he picks up off the street? Are they believers? Are they religious people? Would Sister Paxton have been one of them, and Sister Barnes been one of them, if like things had gone according to plan? I don't know. That's left up to interpretation. So she as she gets goes and looks. She's trying to help them. She's trying to give them coats. And then Mr. Reed comes in and he's like, okay, you figured it out. And then she noticed that, she told him that she had noticed that something was off when the woman said it is not real. She's like, I think that she went off script. And he's like, yeah, he's telling her that he's clipping the one's nails, the one that talked to her, and then he cuts off one of her fingers because she was bad. She was a bad girl. So then he asks Sister Paxton to, what's the one true religion? And she starts talking about, like, she's like, you let me believe this whole time, you let us believe this whole time that we had choices in the matter, but I'm only standing here because you wanted me to be here. And then she's like, so he goes, okay, Sister Paxton, what's the one true religion? And she says, control. And I was like, oh, mic drop. So yeah, the whole purpose, and Alyssa Grenfell explains it perfectly about how she feels like Mr. Reed is a metaphor for religion in general, and how it starts off, for a lot of people to start off really, really good and really, really happy. And I'm not saying this about everybody, everybody's experiences are different, but a lot of stories I've heard about different scenarios, people who have deconstructed from certain religions, they buy into it so much until they can't anymore, until it starts to get really dark and really sinister, and then they're like, oh, okay, this is not what I want to be a part of. It can even be like in groups too. At that point, after she realizes that, it's control, he says something about he starts talking about how the Mormon church controls everything she does, and he says even down to your magic underwear, and she stabs him in the throat when he says that. She's like, it's still the code word, no matter who says magic underwear. Sister Paxton was like, it's on site. So she stabs him in the throat, and she takes off running, and she runs through the house. And this was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, just the cinematography, because as she's running through the house, you're looking at this maze on the table that Mr. Reed was playing, like, not playing with, but he was kind of playing with it in one of the scenes, and you can see her running through the maze, like, and so she's running and running, and then all of a sudden she comes into the room, and then that's when the realization hits her that both doors led to the same place. Now I saw that. I saw that coming. I knew that both doors were going to lead to the same place, because the whole point was to really make them test their faith. But the way it was done was just like it was executed beautifully, in my opinion, because to show this toy maze and you could see her running around, and then like the camera pans up and you see her burst through the disbelief door, and then she stops, and then the camera kind of goes around her, and she realizes, like, you see the horror in her face as she realizes there was never a choice. There was never, and I was like, I loved that. That was so good. I loved that so much. I was like, there was never a choice. There was never a choice. They were going to be in the position they were in regardless, because he was in control of everything. Oh, it's so good. So then she gets back downstairs, and she goes back down to the dungeon. She's trying to figure everything out. And as she's trying to figure out how to get out of there, Mr. Reed stabs her in the stomach. So she collapses to the ground. He's still bleeding from his throat, and he asks her while he's bleeding to pray for them. And so she starts telling him about a study that was done, to explain, to discover if prayer actually was real, if there was any power to it. And she asks him if he's ever heard of this experiment, and he's like, no. And she explains it to him in detail, and then she goes, you want to know what the results were? And he's like, yeah. He like nods, and she's like, it didn't work. Prayer isn't real. And then she goes, but I pray because it feels nice to think about somebody else and want the best for somebody else. Which I think is kind of nice. I do think that's kind of nice. Like, deep down inside, she knows that prayer's not real necessarily, but it's comforting to her. And that's kind of like, now, I've seen some complaints about how this movie is very pro-religion, but I don't think it was like pro-Mormonism, because it wasn't really like painting Mormonism in a good light necessarily. It wasn't painting it in a bad light, but it wasn't painting it in a good light either. I think what the movie was trying to get at, and at least the message I took from it, is that whatever you believe, your faith, even if you might know deep down inside it could not be real, like your faith is still special to you. And that's whatever it is. Even if you believe in, a flying spaghetti monster. Um like truly it's what's important. And I know, like, with my spirituality, because I don't follow any doctor and I don't follow any person or I don't go to a church, but my spiritual beliefs are so, like, broad. I guess you could say they're so broad. And I believe when I'm doing the things that I do for my spirituality, I believe in that. And the belief is what keeps me going. And sometimes things work out in my favor, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, I know that, it feels good to believe in something. It feels good to have something to believe in. And I think that's pretty much what Sister Paxton was getting at, was that, she liked praying even though she knew because of that experiment that it wasn't real. She knew, like, she wasn't debating it. She wasn't going, well, they're wrong. They're wrong that prayer's not real. She literally said, like, prayer's not real. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. She wanted to pray because it made her feel good, that she was giving good vibes, good energy, whatever you want to call it. She was caring about somebody else, which I think is incredibly sweet, no matter how you slice it. Because for me personally, I always try to live my life as though I'm giving everybody love as much as I possibly can. I'm not trying to say that I was like, oh, I'm a great person, because I'm definitely not the best person in the world. But I always try to treat everybody with love and care, because I think it's important to allow people to feel that love. And in religion, that should be what it's about. A lot of religions have gotten twisted to be about other things, but it should be about love and caring about each other and taking care of your communities and taking care of each other. And I think that's what they were getting at with that ending with Sister Paxton. Like, not the ending, but like with that moment with Sister Paxton, I think that's what they were getting at with that part. So then she starts praying. Mr. Reed comes up to her and he goes to finish her off. And then all of a sudden, Sister Barnes rises from the dead. And there was a board that had fallen from one of the windows with nails in it. And so she whacks Mr. Reed in the face and finishes him off. And then she passes in Sister Paxton's arms. I'm just going to say it right here. That part was incredibly ham fisted, because let's be real. We know what that board and those nails were signifying. And on top of that, having a character that was deceased and reborn, we know what that was signifying. So I can see why people are like, this movie's very pro, like, Christianity, pro Mormonism, pro religion, because, especially because of that moment. But I also didn't take that moment necessarily. I took that moment, for me personally, which, I'm just a person on the internet. I took that moment as her, as Sister Paxton, sort of like seeing confirmation that God is real and protecting her, um in the sense of the way that, here's this person that, that loved her. I mean, people can come back, not come back from the dead, but, people can get second wins with whatever injury. I forgot to talk about the metal part that was in her arm. I'm sorry, that it was in Sister Barnes' arm. That was birth control. That was birth control. Sister Paxton knew it. Like, she was like, yes, this is birth control. It's not a chip, it's a birth control. So yeah, it was birth control. Who knows why Sister Barnes had it? It could have been for medical reasons. Even Alyssa Grenfell actually says that there were some Mormon women that she knew that got this specific type of birth control because of health reasons. So it could have been because of health reasons. It may not have been because she was, getting wild and getting freaky. But if it was, good for her. That's all I can say. Good for her. But yeah, so after Sister Barnes passes, Sister Paxton finally finds her way out of the house, and she's walking through this snowy landscape. And then she finally stops to take a breath, and she probably is succumbing to her injuries. And the ending of this movie is left ambiguous. I'm just going to give you my personal interpretation of the ending of this movie. So there is a part in the beginning of the movie where Sister Paxton mentions that when she dies, she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly, which, Mormons, I don't think they believe in reincarnation, but she mentions that. And at the end of the movie, when she's slowly bleeding out from her injuries, she's sitting on the ground and a butterfly lands on her finger. And then when it cuts to a different cut, the butterfly is gone. Very quick, like 2-second cut. Um, and my interpretation of this is that she, my interpretation of this is that she is, I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. She is questioning her faith. That's my interpretation of that. Now, she's likely passing away in this moment. She had a deep wound in her stomach, and unless somebody comes along and finds her and gets her to a hospital, she's likely going to pass away. But it's kind of the look on her face when it cuts to her face after the butterfly is gone. There's something about the look on her face that looks not necessarily peaceful. She looks confused, in my opinion. So I kind of took the ending of the movie that she is questioning. Like, she's seen and heard things that are putting a bug in her ear, that are maybe not necessarily changing her beliefs entirely, but making her look at things differently. Now, I've seen several different interpretations of the ending, including many people thinking that the butterfly represents Sister Barnes coming and saying goodbye to her. I don't know what the actual meaning of the ending of the movie is. It, if it's something completely different, please let me know down in the comments. But that's the end. That's where the movie ends. That's where Heretic ends. And I gotta say, I really, really like this movie. I kind of knew I was gonna like it, because I like cerebral horror. Okay, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, you're so like, people are so like uppity. They like cerebral horror. Like, I do like cerebral horror. I do like horror that makes you think a little bit more. But I also like, I mean, I also love the Terrifier movies. So like, I can go for some hack and slash and blood and guts and gore. I can go for some mindless entertainment. But this is like the stuff that really like makes me like excited when I watch a movie like this. It almost reminded me of the first time I saw Get Out, for example. I saw Get Out in theaters, and it was like an amazing experience. I loved the movie. I thought it was brilliantly done. And it was like when I left the theater, I couldn't stop thinking about that movie, and I just was analyzing it in my brain. It was the same thing with this movie. Like, Heretic was the same way. I turned off the TV after, and I was just like, wow, that was a good movie. Like I said, the atmosphere of the movie is incredibly unsettling. Everybody does a fantastic job in this movie. Their parts are great. I would love to see Hugh Grant in more villainous roles. I think that he has the charm of somebody who can be a very sly villain, like a villain that you don't really know is a villain until it's too late. um but he did a great job. He really did. He knocked it out of the park for that one. And Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, both of them were fantastic. This movie was really good, but again, heavy it is a heavier subject matter. So if you're somebody who is very sensitive to like religion bashing, I wouldn't necessarily like watch this, because it's gonna piss you off in certain parts. Like I said, for me, I was like, I mean, I agree with a lot of his points, but also I don't like how he's going about it. But I wouldn't recommend this if you just like don't like religion bashing. But if you are somebody who's a little bit more open minded, I would highly recommend watching this movie, because this movie is fantastic. It is probably one of the best A24 movies to release in recent years, especially after I watched that crap, The Front Room. I'm leaving that in too, by the way. The Front Room is crap. Don't watch that movie. I swear to God, please. I couldn't even do a review on that movie. It's crap. Don't watch it. So yeah, so like I said, this movie comes highly recommended by me. If you like this type of stuff, check it out. I give it a whopping 4 out of 5 skulls. 4 out of 5. This is such a good movie, and it's probably gonna be like up there with a movie that I revisit quite frequently, like Hereditary. um but in that case, I am going to wrap things up now. I have yapped for way longer than I thought I was going to yap, because I decided to talk about the entire movie. But yeah, I really like this movie. Let me know what you guys think. Did you watch this movie? Do you like this movie? Did you hate this movie? Whatever you like, whatever you think, I'm open to hearing like your opinions. And also check out Alyssa Grenfell's video of her review on this movie, because she's going to come at it from a way that I think is very important to this movie, because she was raised Mormon and she knows like way more than I could ever ever say. So yeah, check out her video. It's in the description below. Definitely check that out. And if you haven't gotten enough of me, you can go and check out my website. I will leave the link in the description down below. I am going to start this coming, not this week, but next week. I'm going to start actually like writing stuff in there. So go check that blog out, my blog out. I do have social media. I'm at Creepy Critiques on pretty much everything except for Twitter. I refuse to call it what it is, but I barely use social media. So like, I mean, you can follow me. I'm not going to stop you, but like, I barely use social media. Let's be so for real. I struggle with social media. So, but you can follow me. Check out my other videos on the channel. There's going to be more content coming up soon. Like I said, I do have a Yellow Jackets review that's going to be coming up because I'm super into Yellow Jackets. However, we have another movie review that I am going to be getting to, and I'm going to try to have it out next week. But it's a movie that I didn't really like, and I need to rant about it. And no, it's not The Front Room. I don't even want to like give that movie the time of day, but this one I am going to, because this is a very popular movie, and I'm going to be that guy and say a lot of bad things about it. No, I'm not going to like crap all over it. I'm going to be diplomatic, but I am going to complain about the movie. So yeah, if you like this video, like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, leave a comment. Any engagements lets me know that you liked what you just watched. Or you can hit the dislike button. That works too. It's engagement. In any case, thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time with another creepy critique.